bad equipment can undeniably hold you back from reaching your true potential. So in today's video, I'll be going over how you can get an amazing setup whether you're on a strict budget or have all the money in the world. I'll of course also leave links to every single product I'm talking about in today's video in the description. To begin with, I want to talk about two budget gaming mice that are incredible value for money, namely the Razer Cobra coming in at $50 and the VXE Dragonfly R1 Pro Max. Now, the main difference between these gaming mice is that the Cobra is wired and the Dragonfly is wireless. And of course, when peripherals are coming in at these affordable price points, there are unfortunately going to be some cons. So I'm going to go over each and every one so that you know exactly what you're buying. To make it as easily understandable as possible, I'll first go over both the pros and cons of the Razer Cobra. The scroll wheel might not be everyone's cup of tea. This is thanks to the fact that it could be considered on the mushier side. Or in other words, it feels a little bit soft instead of tactile like a lot of people, including myself, prefer. The scroll wheel also doesn't stick far out, like it does on, for example, the Logitech G Pro X Superlight 2, which is something you'll 1000% get used to, but it might take some time. With that said though, the scroll wheel in itself works flawlessly. The mouse also comes in at just 58 grams, with incredible build quality throughout. The switches used for the mouse clicks are the same ones Razer uses in much more expensive mice. So in many ways, you are getting a bit of a steal when buying this one. I also gotta add that the mouse gates are phenomenal, and the side buttons as well are better than on many mice you'll find at 3 times the price point. If I were on a strict budget, I'd definitely consider this mouse. The only real thing that would hold me back from buying it would have been the fact that it's wired, just because it would take quite some time to get used to playing with a wired mouse once again. With that said though, for mouse wires, it doesn't get much better than on the Razer Cobra. And in many ways, it's so good to the point where it almost feels like you're playing wireless. The second budget mouse I have chosen is, in my eyes, currently the absolute best budget wireless gaming mouse out there, period. And that is the VXE Dragonfly R1 Pro Max. This mouse also comes in at $50, and the clicks and side buttons are extremely tactile. Unfortunately though, the scroll wheel here as well isn't impressive when using it to reset walls. For some reason, very few gaming mice suppliers are able to make a scroll wheel that feels both responsive, tactile, and satisfying. In a bit, I'll talk about a mouse that manages to fulfill all of that, but it sadly comes in at a much higher price point. Another thing that I absolutely love about the Dragonfly is that the software to change things like DPI and polling rate doesn't have to be downloaded. Of course, you have that option too, but you can change everything by using their web-based software. This allows you to not have so many annoying apps on your computer, and I wish more brands started following this trend. The mouse also comes in at an impressive 49 grams, meaning it's extremely light and it feels super satisfying to use. The brand behind this mouse has not at all sponsored this video, but if you want to go ahead and buy the mouse, you can use code MERNTM at checkout for 5% off your order. This code will probably last forever, so whether you're watching the day this video got released or a year later, it'll probably still work. Now, before you make a purchase of any mouse I'm going over in today's video, I'd strongly recommend checking out eloshapes.com and using their compare tool to see if the mouse you're about to purchase is similar in shape to a mouse you've used and enjoyed before. It's truly annoying when you're hyped to get a mouse and you unbox it just to find that the shape of the mouse feels terrible for you. If your budget is more in the mid-range, then I have some great suggestions for you. However, one thing I need to note is that most gaming mice around the $100 mark, yes, I can't believe I'm calling $100 mid-range either, but nearly all these mice are phenomenally good. And at this price, what I recommend is finding a mouse with a shape you love. What I'll be focusing on though are gaming mice that, in my opinion, have fantastic scroll wheels, because as we know in Fortnite, that is super important for scroll wheel reset. I'll also share mice that have highly satisfying and responsive clicks, good side buttons, as well as good mouse feet stock out of the box, so that these picks are all picks you definitely can't go wrong with, as long as the shape fits your hand. The first mouse I want to mention for my mid-range category is the Ninjutso Sora V2. Now, the reason this mouse is so insane in my opinion is because it weighs only 39 grams. This may be very subjective, but for me, the lower the weight, the better. What's incredible about this mouse as well is that the quality is fantastic. Although the mouse is light as a feather, they didn't manage to do that at the expense of the build quality. One slightly negative thing about the Ninjutso Sora V2 though is that it is small, and if you have medium-sized hands or even quite large ones, it might might take some time to get used to. Or, in other words, if you have big hands, it may just not be the best fit for you. However, I have medium-sized hands, and I've had the pleasure of trying the mouse, and to me, it feels super impressive. I do believe that is thanks to the fact that I'm very comfortable using a claw grip. If you palm grip your mouse and you can't have another grip, then don't get this mouse. The side buttons on this one are top tier if you're curious about that. Actually, some of the best side buttons I've personally tested. The position of these side buttons as well is very comfortable to me, and I think you'll 100% feel the same if you decide to get it. Another thing that impressed me a lot was the scroll wheel. As mentioned, very few mice get the scroll wheel right, but this one undeniably does in my eyes. One thing a lot of people may look at as negative is that the mouse comes without mouse skates, but don't worry, they are in the box, but you need to apply them yourself. The beauty here is that it comes with control and speed skates, essentially meaning fast and slow mouse skates that you can apply depending on how you prefer your glide to be. If I had a $100 budget for a mouse to buy today, I would have definitely bought this one as it has it all in my eyes. Side buttons are solid, the scroll wheel is fantastic, and it weighs next to nothing. I would have, however, stayed away if I had giant hands, as this, again, is a mouse on the smaller side. Before we move on to high-end gaming mice, I need to mention one more mid-range one, and that is the Waizowl OGM Pro V2. If you have hands that are a bit on the bigger side of things, this mouse will be better for you. This mouse is incredibly impressive in a few areas. First and foremost, it has the best and most satisfying side buttons I have ever used on any gaming mouse ever. In addition to remarkably good side buttons, the main clicks are also super satisfying. Waizowl also gets the scroll wheel right in that it is one of the most responsive scroll wheels I have ever tested. When resetting a wall in Fortnite, it kind of feels like you have macros. That is how responsive it is to scroll down on this mouse. Again here, the mouse doesn't come with skates pre-applied. You have to put them on yourself, but that shouldn't be a problem given that Waizowl includes 3 sets of skates for you: speed, control, and dot skates. This mouse is all around incredible, especially if you have semi-big hands. It costs around $96 and it has everything needed to perform at the highest level in Fortnite. The shape is slightly ergonomic, so keep that in mind if you decide to order this one. The final price range is of course the high-end gaming mice. For this category, the best pick in my eyes is stupidly easy, and that is the Razer Viper V3 Pro. In my eyes, this is the perfect mouse for Fortnite competitive. The scroll wheel is perfection, the clicks are fast, satisfying, and consistent, the side buttons are top tier, it's light, and the shape fits, so to say, everyone. Of course, you could make the argument that the shape isn't perfect for people using claw grip, and I do see that argument 100%, so keep that in mind if that sounds like you, and you're on the lookout for a new mouse. The mouse also offers a polling rate of up to 8000 Hz, and I haven't really talked much about polling rate in today's video, although the mid-range mice I talked about earlier also offer polling rates of up to 8K, and that's just because I never see myself playing with a higher polling rate than 1K. The difference is extremely minimal in my eyes, and the extra strain on my CPU just don't feel worth it when it comes to playing competitively. The unfortunate downside of the Razer Viper V3 Pro is that it costs $160 if you're from the US, and for us in Europe, it unfortunately costs even more like $180. In addition, you unfortunately have to download Razer Synapse to fix DPI, polling rate, and so forth with your mouse, which stinks in my opinion. As mentioned, I much prefer the software of my peripherals to be website oriented. But other than that, if I ever am to recommend any mouse to anyone who I know are relatively well off financially and are looking to invest a good chunk of money into a new mouse, the answer has been the Razer Viper V3 Pro for a long time now, and I doubt that will change in the near future. Since this is a list of the best equipment at every price point, I also need to talk about the Logitech G Pro X Superlight 2, because this mouse as well is very beloved in the Fortnite community. The GPX2 is an all-around very good mouse, which is to be expected considering the $160 price tag. As you may be able to tell, I'm not as big a fan of this one as many others, but again, that is simply my subjective opinion, and objectively speaking, that is possibly the wrong opinion. The side buttons are, in my eyes, impressively bad on this mouse, and that makes it not worth the price in comparison to the Razer Viper V3 Pro. However, if you're someone who doesn't use side buttons when playing, the GPX2 might actually be better. You see, there's no denying that the clicks on the GPX are world class. I'm talking probably the #1 clicks ever produced. The scroll wheel as well isn't bad at all, but again, it doesn't stand up to the Viper V3 Pro. The shape of the GPX is fantastic, the stock skates are very good, and the coating of the mouse is in my opinion impressive. Listen, if you have a good budget for a gaming mouse, you won't go wrong with the GPX2. It's a fantastic mouse with great qualities, and objectively speaking, it's one of the best gaming mice ever made. Alright, I have now yapped about gaming mice for 10 minutes. It's time to talk about what the best gaming keyboards are at every price point. And first, we of course need to talk about the best budget-friendly keyboard. Now, keyboards are extremely weird. If you're going to buy a budget keyboard, they are usually extremely slow in comparison to more expensive keyboards. It's actually a much bigger difference with keyboards and performance from cheap to expensive than it is for gaming mice. That is why my suggestion for the best gaming keyboard is yet again remarkably easy. And it may not be exactly what you want here, but in my opinion, the best gaming keyboard, without a shadow of a doubt, out there under the budget category, is the Razer Huntsman Mini Renewed on Amazon. These keyboards cost anywhere from $50 to $70 and are amazing keyboards for the money. If you're wondering what renewed means, it simply means that the keyboards have been sent back by a customer. The keyboard has then been looked at by a professional. If something was wrong with the keyboard, they had fixed said issue and then published it for sale. It may occasionally have minor cosmetic imperfections, but in order for them to sell the keyboard, it needs to work exactly like it did when it was brand new. In many ways, it's kind of a waste to buy anything brand new. Renewed is just as good, just way cheaper. And the beauty of it is that if anything should happen to be wrong, you can of course, within a 90-day window, return the product to Amazon and get a full refund. The Razer Huntsman Mini Renewed will not in any way, shape or form hold you back from reaching your true potential in playing competitively. So if you're looking at getting a keyboard in this price range, to me, there's no question about whether this is it or not, because it is. When it comes to mid-range keyboards, the best one is yet again easy, but it's probably also not what you want to hear. Objectively speaking, ladies and gentlemen, the best mid-range keyboard you can get is undeniably a Steelseries Apex Pro secondhand. And I wish I could say that a brand new keyboard was the best mid-range one, but in 2025, no mid-range keyboards are as good as secondhand Apex Pros. Now, one keyboard comes incredibly close. The Razer Huntsman Mini brand new. On Amazon, you can usually get this brand new for around $100, since there's almost always a sale on it, which is an amazing deal, considering the keyboard is really good. And I do believe you wouldn't really notice any difference at all in how fast the Huntsman is in comparison to the Apex Pro. But objectively speaking, the Apex is a little bit faster. The reason I'm recommending the SteelSeries Apex Pros secondhand is because I know just how durable these keyboards are, and you get them as cheap as like $80 in good condition. I think I got my first Apex Pro in the beginning of 2020 and it's still working flawlessly today, although I have changed it for a keyboard I will talk about in just a minute. At the end of today's video, I'll talk a little bit about how I personally like to buy things secondhand to ensure good deals. If you're interested in watching that straight away, feel free to use the video chapters to find that part of the video, because buying secondhand is seriously a hack to get an amazing setup for an amount that doesn't break the bank. Alright, moving on to high-end keyboards, the best keyboard in the world is the Wooting 80HE. The Wooting 80HE is Wooting's newest keyboard, and it comes in at $200. The reason the 80HE is slightly better than the 60HE, 60HE Plus, and the Wooting 2HE is due to the fact that the keyboard has an 8000 Hz polling rate, simply meaning that the clicks are updated even more frequently, which gives a feeling of the keyboard being even faster, and it makes it feel like you just have a little bit less input delay when building and editing. In addition to the keyboard just objectively speaking being the fastest keyboard on the market, the build quality and sound of the keyboard is, in my opinion, the best out there when it comes to gaming keyboards for Fortnite. In addition, Wooting has web-based software for their keyboard, which I love. As I mentioned earlier, I strongly dislike having to download 100 different apps just to get my peripherals to work. So well done to Wooting on this front too. The downsides people have experienced with Wooting is that occasionally, especially in the past, the keyboards have been sold out and there have been rather long shipping times. Nowadays, it seems a ton better. And of course, if the shipping times are expected to be long, Wooting will let you know before you go ahead and order. In short, if I were to buy a new keyboard today, I would, without a shadow of a doubt, buy the Wooting 80HE because it objectively doesn't get better than this. Moving on, we of course need to talk about mousepads. A good mousepad will make the entire competitive Fortnite experience much more enjoyable. And although 99% of gaming mice today come with optical sensors, meaning they will work on any surface, having a mousepad will be the right move for consistency when it comes to tracking, flicking, and the general movement when playing comp. The budget-friendly mousepad I want to share isn't really that cheap, in that it costs $29.99. However, it is the most durable mousepad I've ever used, meaning even though you'll have to pay $30 up front, this one will probably last twice as long as a mousepad that costs $15. And it's also the mousepad with my favorite glide ever. The pad I'm talking about is the Endgamegear MPC450. This mousepad is very, very fast, but it comes with a rather rough surface, which means that it impressively still gives you a ton of feedback and also makes the stopping power of the pad extremely good. So if you're flicking onto an opponent, it's super easy to stop the mouse exactly when you're on the opponent's head. Micro corrections are also effortless when using this one. The only reason I'm not using this pad is because it has a very rough stitching, and since I use a super low sensitivity, I often find myself going all the way to the edge of my mousepad, and being limited by the stitching is something I'm not a fan of. If I played a higher sense, I would 1000% use this pad personally, and I really wish they would have fixed this seemingly small problem, because the pad in itself is incredible. Next up, I'm going to say a sentence that will haunt me for the rest of my life. For my mid-range mousepad recommendation, I'm recommending the very impressive pad, the Pulsar X LGG Hyperion pad, which comes in at $50. Saying that a mousepad is mid-range when it costs $50 is probably considered a criminal offense internationally, but considering everything has become so extremely expensive recently, I just don't know where else to put this amazing pad. The Hyperion is a pad you can't go wrong with. The stitching is flawless, it comes in 3 different base hardnesses, and the surfacing on the pad is super cool to me, as when you move the mouse back and forth from right to left or left to right, the mouse moves relatively quickly, and when you move from the top to bottom or bottom to top, it moves slightly slower. What this results in is a pad that, in my eyes, has an incredible surface for aimers. Now, I do need to note that this may be a subjective opinion, because I tend to occasionally overflick when flicking either up or down. And if this sounds relatable, then I would definitely consider checking this mousepad out, because it is truly spectacular. Moving into my high-end category, the word to describe this mousepad wouldn't be spectacular. In my eyes, after having tested this mousepad, this is, without exaggeration, the perfect mousepad for Fortnite. The Artisan Zero Mid. This mousepad is exactly as fast as I'd like a mousepad for building and editing to be, coupled with the fact that I can easily control my aim thanks to the glide of the pad. The stitching is top-notch and doesn't cause any problems ever, since the stitches are low profile, which causes me to never uncomfortably drive over the stitches with my mouse. I think I can actually go as far as saying that, objectively speaking, this is the best mousepad for the average Fortnite competitive player. That is how incredible it is. What's also unfortunately incredible is the price tag. The Zero Mid, if you want it in XL, which I definitely recommend, costs $75 to $80. The pad should last multiple years, as the quality is super high, and in my experience, even after having grinded for hours a day consistently for years with it, it's still 100% enjoyable. Not quite as good as new, but I'm still super satisfied with it, and I'll honestly continue using it until I notice that it holds me back, which will probably take another few years. The best headsets are what we're going to be talking about next, and I think a lot of people underestimate the importance of headsets. Like, a good headset can genuinely make you quite a lot better, compared to if you use a bad one. Of course, as we know, the audio in Fortnite isn't really that impressive, but given that you have the right headphones, you can extract super valuable information from the audio cues you're given. So first up, let's talk about the best budget-friendly headset. The best headset you can buy if you're on a budget is the HyperX Cloud Stinger 2 Core. This headset comes with a price tag of $40 normally, but it's very often on sale, and you can get it for $35 or even cheaper. Now, considering the price is quite cheap, there are some downsides I need to talk about. The build quality of the headset feels a bit cheap, which isn't weird at all given that it's fully made out of plastic. But even though the build quality lacks a little, it still feels impressively durable. The base on the headset is also not top tier, but honestly, having top tier base isn't crucial in a game like Fortnite. Things like directional audio is much more important, and when it comes to that, this headset is impressive. The mic you'll get with it is also very, very good, and it's a light set of headphones, so having it on for hours on end feels pretty good. I think at this price point, the Cloud Stinger 2 Core is hard to beat. feet. And if I had 30 to 40 bucks to spend on a headset, I would buy this without hesitating. Moving into the mid-range category, you'll find a lot of really good headsets. Some headsets you can't go wrong with are the HyperX Cloud 3 and the Logitech G Pro X headsets. These are the two most popular headsets for Fortnite competitive, and for good reason. They're very good. However, there are some drawbacks to both headsets that, in my opinion, my pick for the best mid-range headset doesn't have. And my favorite mid-range headset that I personally use is the Steelseries Arctis Nova 5. This headset costs 130 bucks, which is a little bit more than both the Cloud 3 and G Pro headsets. But let me tell you why I think it's worth it. First and foremost, the directional audio on this headset is, in my opinion, very noticeably better than on both the other ones. It's also a wireless headset, which is awesome, and it also offers good bass, and although as mentioned that isn't super important for Fortnite, it does add a nice touch of depth to the audio. The headset is of course also very comfortable, but the same can be said for the two other headsets too. It also has a mic that is incredibly impressive, like I'm talking it's so good to the point where you can easily succeed on YouTube with it. All over, the Arctis Nova 5 is immaculate, and if you end up getting this one, you definitely won't regret it. Now, if you're someone who just wants the best of the best, then you're going to have to pay quite a bit. The high-end headset I think is the current GOAT for headsets when it comes to Fortnite competitive is the Audeze Maxwell. If you want to acquire one of these, you're going to have to pay $299, which is a lot, but with this set of headphones, you truly get what you're paying for. Before I begin talking about why they're so good, I also want to mention the Azone A-Rise, which are $800 headphones that are probably, objectively speaking, the best gaming headphones on the planet. With that said though, even though this headset costs almost 3 times as much as the Maxwell, it's probably not even like 15% better. So that's why I'm going to instead focus my time on talking about the ultra impressive Audeze Maxwell headset. The Maxwell is a headset that allows you to hear details you've never heard before. The directional audio is at the peak of what is possible in terms of audio, and they are also wireless, which makes for an insanely satisfying competitive gaming experience. The build quality on this set of headphones as well is just unmatched. Everything feels so good with this headset, and you can tell that it'll last you a lifetime. The one downside to this tremendous quality is that they are on the heavier side. But although that is the case, they are still incredibly comfortable to wear, even if you're going to grind for 12 hours straight. If I were a billionaire, I would have honestly bought the Maxwell without hesitating. They have everything needed to ensure that you hear everything you need to perform at the highest level of competitive. And I almost forgot to mention, the mic that comes with it is also super good. Next up, we gotta talk about monitors. And if there's one thing I'm super passionate about, it's monitors. Finding the right display for you with the right hertz, response time, panel type, etc. are all things we'll be going into detail about when going over these specs. To begin with, we'll talk about the undisputed GOAT of budget monitors, namely the Koorui 24E3. This monitor right now costs 116 bucks on Amazon, and it's a 165Hz monitor with incredible colors for the price. You see, very often with these budget screens, you'll find that the colors are super stale and boring, but that couldn't be further from the truth on the 24E3. When you get this one, set it up and start playing, you won't be thinking about the fact that this is a budget item. That is how good of a monitor it is. On a bit of a different topic, I've actually been asked countless times whether you can go pro or not on 144Hz or 165Hz, and the answer to that is 100% yes you can. A lot of pro players played on 144Hz screens for years, and some players succeeding today aren't playing on more than that. If you think you need 240Hz or more, you're simply wrong. In addition to the impressive hertz and colors for the price, the response time on this screen is also incredible. When tested, you'll get response times around 3 milliseconds, which is more than what is needed given that each new frame on a 165Hz monitor is being shown every 6th millisecond. I think in terms of value for money, this monitor right here is the actual definition of that saying. I'm super impressed with this one, and if this is within your budget, I'm confident you'll be too. On the topic of mid-range monitors, my pick is almost as easy as it was with the budget-friendly option. The MSI 264QBX is a 1440p monitor that also offers 240Hz and is a steal for the price. You'll usually find a screen anywhere from 300 to 350 bucks, and the performance of it is seriously solid. I know a lot of you guys watching are probably scared to buy 1440p monitors, as running 1440p over 1080p demands a bit more from your computer. But this really shouldn't be a worry. Rendering pixels is the job of your GPU, and as you know, know, Fortnite isn't a GPU heavy game at all, but rather an extremely CPU heavy game. What that means is that your GPU has more than enough room to work on rendering in those extra pixels, without you noticing much or any difference at all in performance. The color accuracy on this monitor as well just screams way above its price point. From all the research I have done on monitors in this price range and other monitors that are even more expensive, if I were to guess the price of this screen, I would have guessed around the $500 mark. That is how insane of a steal this is. It's actually so good to the point where I don't really understand MSI's pricing here. All in all, this monitor is all you need for competitive Fortnite. It's more than good enough to never ever hold you back from reaching your true potential, and spending more on a monitor should only be for enthusiasts. The amount of return you'll get in terms of like making the game easier above this price point is close to zero. The game obviously becomes drastically easier from 60Hz to 144Hz, and it's also noticeable from 144Hz to 240Hz. But doubling the price of a monitor to get 360Hz isn't really gonna make you a better player. But it is a luxury that is nice to have. So that's why I'll also talk about the best high-end monitor you can buy right now for Fortnite competitive. The ultimate monitor for competitive in 2025 is the Alienware AW2725DF. Now, the reason this monitor is my pick is because it offers 1440p, QD OLED, and beautiful 360Hz. Obviously, given that the screen is OLED, the colors are also just unbelievably good, and it makes for a totally different experience than on, for example, IPS panels like on the MSI and Koorui. A more enjoyable experience, but not at all performance increasing, of course. The monitor being 360Hz will for some people be a negative, as when playing endgames in competitive, you won't get 360 FPS consistently. And although this is also the case for me, I'm glad I have 360Hz. When playing creative, this monitor right here is so insane to the point where it feels like I have zero input delay. And when it comes to those endgames, the fact that the screen is 360Hz doesn't impact me negatively. A lot of people think that when you drop below 360 FPS, it feels bad for some reason, but this isn't at all the case. The monitor, even when playing at 240 frames, feels buttery smooth. The hertz is just how many times per second the monitor can display a new image. And when you get 240 FPS, the monitor displays those frames even more smoothly than on a 240Hz monitor, because 360Hz screens are better at that than 240 ones. In addition to this, a 360Hz monitor will have slightly better motion clarity than a 240Hz screen, even when frames are lower than 360. So in my opinion, having the thought that 360Hz monitors are bad just because you don't always run 360 FPS is a bit of an outdated way of thinking. It doesn't really work like that. The only downside I have noticed so far with the monitor is that it gets dirty extremely fast, and I've never had to clean a screen more often than this one. But that's a small price to pay for just how insanely crisp and satisfying it is to play with. So in short, in my eyes, this is currently the best monitor for Fortnite, although it has a hefty price tag of $700. Now, even after having heard all of that, if you still want a 240Hz monitor instead of a 360 one, I can strongly recommend the Asus XG27AQDMG. This one is slightly cheaper with a price tag of $650. The screen is 1440p, it's a WOLED panel, and again, the colors are stunning. One thing that's noticeably better on this monitor compared to the Alienware one I just talked about is the brightness. Both these monitors of course offer HDR, and I think objectively speaking the Asus does a better job at exactly that. Now, HDR and Fortnite competitive doesn't really go hand in hand, but if you're someone who loves watching movies and shows, this is something to keep in mind. Whether you choose the Asus or Alienware, I can almost guarantee that you'll be blown away, as both these screens offer, so to say, everything you want and more. So if you're in the market for a new screen, these are the two I would highly consider. Alright guys, there you have it, the best equipment for Fortnite competitive at every price. All the products I've talked about will be linked in the description below, and if you are in the market for a new controller, I'd strongly recommend checking out another Fortnite YouTuber, as personally I have nowhere near enough experience with controllers to confidently give you the best options. That's it for now guys, thank you so much for watching.